panic attacks happen as a result of your fight or flight response, your natural response to danger and threats. So being under a lot of constant stress and worry, or maybe already dealing with anxiety, can make you susceptible to panic attacks. And when you're in that state, when you're already overwhelmed, it won't take much to push you over the edge into a state of panic. So what can you do to stop panic attacks happening before they start? Well, in this video, I'm going to share 3 powerful steps that when you follow will help you stop panic attacks happening and in the long term, help you break free from them altogether. Hello, it's Andrew Major here, clinical hypnotherapist. Now, if you've ever had a panic attack, you know that you can become really fearful of having another one. And that fear can become all-consuming, and it can lead to constant worry and the anticipation of having future panic attacks. More anxiety, essentially. And it means that when that happens, you're actually teaching your brain that your own anxiety is dangerous. And that creates a vicious cycle in your brain, becoming more and more aware and on the lookout for even the smallest sign of anxiety, and then responding to it with an increasingly exaggerated fight or flight response. The problem is that anxiety really does influence the way that we think about and interpret situations in our life. And it makes us very negative. We can start to see everything from the worst possible perspective when that kicks in, catastrophizing about everything, and that just leaves us stuck in that pattern of thinking, and it just amplifies anxiety levels even further. But the good news is that you can stop panic attacks happening by following these 3 steps, and when you do, it will help you retrain your brain so that you don't perceive anxiety as dangerous. And that means that your fight and flight response can stand down more easily, which really is the key to overcoming panic altogether. So let's get started. Step 1. Now this is all about noticing your triggers. What are the triggers? Get really good at spotting the connection between your bodily symptoms and catastrophizing, because we know that panic happens when you worry about your bodily symptoms, those physical feelings that trigger panic. Because of those changes in your body, those physical changes you notice, they really remind you of anxiety. And as it does, it puts your fight and flight response into overdrive. And there are some common triggers actually which can do this, because they can create or increase changes in your body which are slightly unusual. Symptoms like heart palpitations, shortness of breath, feeling dizzy, and even sweating more and more. And they can act as reminders of previous panic attacks that you might have had and create that cycle of anxiety and fear. Now the triggers could be happening around you, outside of your body, in your environment, wherever you might be at that moment. So for example, certain places or situations that have been associated with panic attacks in the past can act as those very triggers. Now it could be crowded spaces, enclosed areas, even fear of heights, and maybe having to give a presentation or talking or public speaking in front of a lot of people. It can become overwhelming, and that can stimulate those changes in your body. It might even be having an argument with your partner, something like that, which really sets off that cycle. Maybe you're watching something which scares you, and that just triggers things in your body, those changes which you associate with anxiety and panic. Internal triggers happen too. Now, for example, it might be memories and thoughts which can trigger changes in your body as well. It might be a certain situation or having a conversation with friends or family which can bring up old memories, distressing thoughts, and even intrusive feelings. And that process in itself can trigger a little bit more anxiety, and you notice that, and that stimulates those physical changes in your body. Now, if you then choose to dwell and increase your focus on those changes, it will make them even more noticeable, and that then becomes easily magnified, which begins that process of worry and catastrophizing. So start to begin a really powerful habit of building that awareness and looking for the situations, the events, the things that are happening to you, even the people and the ideas and thoughts that you have that trigger some of those physical symptoms similar to anxiety. And once you start to identify those patterns, you'll be able to anticipate anxiety coming and be able to choose a better way of responding. And this leads me on nicely to step 2, spot the propaganda. Now the primitive brain, also known as the emotional brain in the limbic system, that plays a crucial role in our survival instincts. Now its primary function is to detect potential threats and to activate the fight or flight response to help keep us safe. However, this part of the brain tends to be really reactive and prone to negative bias. So when we're experiencing a panic attack or a distressing situation, the emotional brain kindly remembers it as a threat, and then it tries to prevent us and protect us from similar experiences happening again. And so it does that by creating associations between the triggering situation or the cues happening around us and that feeling of fear or panic. So as a result, the emotional brain might generate propaganda, meaning that it sends exaggerated or distorted signals to encourage us to avoid that triggering situation altogether. It creates a cycle of fear and physical sensations, and it might start with a small release of adrenaline, which leads to physical symptoms like chest tightness, and that confirms the initial belief that something is really wrong, causing the brain to release more adrenaline. And as a result, the panic cycle intensifies, reinforcing that association between triggers and panic attacks. Now, this avoidance behavior really is a survival mechanism aimed at preventing us from encountering perceived threats and experience panic again. And to spot this propaganda, you need to just get really good at noticing it so you can take intellectual control to prevent that panic attack cycle happening. So when you notice negative thoughts or that propaganda arising, just take a moment to question them. Now, the aim here is to stop thinking about what's happening and therefore stop that worrying process. And this really is the secret to avoiding panic attacks altogether. But how do you stop thinking and worrying? Well, that brings us on nicely to step 3. Step 3 is all about accepting your feelings. Don't fight the panic. Now, this might sound counterproductive because the more that you're able to adopt an attitude of acceptance, no matter how unpleasant the symptoms are, the better you become at coping and therefore building a healthier response to the triggers that break that cycle of panic. So here's how you do it. So let's begin. What you need to do is you start by facing and accepting the sensations and the feelings of panic without trying to fight or resist them. Allow yourself to experience the physical and emotional symptoms without judgment. Now, a really simple technique to use here is being able to cultivate an attitude that says, okay, it's happening again. I can just allow my body to go through this. I can handle this. I've done it before. The next stage in this method is just to accept what your body is doing and don't fight against it. Accept that you are experiencing panic and remind yourself that it's temporary and it's a harmless experience. Adopting an attitude that allows you to let go and just allow your body to have its own reactions, whether that's your heart beating, your chest tightening, feeling dizzy, that allows you to move through any panic symptoms quickly and easily. And the key here is to really watch or observe your changes in your body and your body sensations, no matter how unusual or how odd they feel. And that creates positive reactions and reference points for future responses. And as you do that, the next step is about floating with the sensations of panic rather than trying to control them or even escape from them. So instead of worrying or scaring yourself about your body's reactions, move with them and make reassuring statements to yourself such as, this will pass, I will get through this. Just allow your body to do its own thing, move through the situation, the feelings, the sensations. Tell yourself, I can handle this now, I've got this. And you could even make a list of coping statements for yourself so that you can be prepared if and when that happens. Finally, allow time to pass. And this is because panic is caused by a sudden surge of adrenaline. Now, if you allow yourself to flow with your bodily sensations and your reactions caused by that surge of adrenaline, it will metabolize and be reabsorbed within 3 to 5 minutes. And as soon as that begins to happen, you start to feel better. Because panic attacks are time limited, and in most cases, panic will peak and begin to subside in only a few minutes. And in most cases, quickly, if you don't aggravate it by fighting against it or reacting with it. This acceptance process allows you to develop a more accepting and non-reactive attitude towards panic, gradually reducing its intensity and frequency, and it encourages a gentle and compassionate response to panic, fostering a sense of calm and control, conditioning your responses, and the more that you practice this, the better you become at doing it. And if you found this video useful so far, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button, so we can spread it to more people that would benefit. So let's take a quick look at these important steps we've covered. Now, panic happens because we've taught our brain to be fearful of anxiety. So panic attacks start when we get into that habit of worrying excessively, catastrophizing, about our anxiety and the feelings that we associate with it. And to break free from panic, start by noticing your triggers. Really build that powerful habit of that awareness and looking for those situations, the events, the people, anything which really produces those similar effects, those physical effects which remind you of anxiety. So identify those patterns, and when you do, you'll be able to anticipate anxiety coming on and choose a better way of responding before that panic begins to escalate. So start by noticing the propaganda too, those negative thoughts that crop up from our primitive brain which leads us to catastrophize. Don't fight panic. Use the acceptance method, and don't run or resist panic either. Just allow your body to do its thing. Remind yourself that it will pass, and just allow adrenaline levels to dissipate naturally. Give it time. So with acceptance and a positive mindset, you really can gain control of panic. Finally, and this is one of the really important things for me, is to remember that the key to putting panic attacks behind you completely, really, is understanding that ongoing stress, anxiety and panic are so closely connected, because stress can lead to anxiety, and that really does act as a catalyst for panic attacks. So it really is important that in addition to these 3 steps, that you also begin doing things which reduce anxiety levels generally, and that means in the long term that you will have a calmer mind and a calmer body, and your reactions and your behaviours will be more rational too. So seeking out professional therapy can be the key to long-term change, especially psychological therapies such as CBT, because that can really help you with the practical coping skills and techniques to manage anxiety, helping you regain a sense of control. Now, in my clinical practice online, I combine aspects of CBT with solution-focused therapy and hypnosis. And that really helps my clients reduce the impact of anxiety and stress as they tap into their inner resources and develop practical solutions to overcome panic, so they can begin to live life to the full again gradually. And if you're curious about hypnosis, I've actually created a guided hypnosis session which you might find helpful to listen to if you're dealing with panic and anxiety. So you can go and watch that now, or save it for later, and I look forward to seeing you there.